So people are coming in, so we should be
They are
seeing
already here. Hello, everyone.
people here.
Yeah, everyone's here. I mean, I think people are coming in
We
more.
need at least 10 circumcised males before we begin.
Oh my gosh. I
That's what
don't know how.
that's in the Jewish religion.
I know. Is it called a minion?
A minion, that's right. Good for you.
See, I'm learning all of these.
I saw this great card. It had a
Yeah,
picture of a guy in a sombrero,
right,
dressed, total Mexican dress. And he
right,
was surrounded by all these Jews with, kippah, talis, and
right.
the guy was smiling. And underneath it said, "You're Juan in a minion."
Oh,
Oh,
that's cute. I know that is for this cartoon, this Despicable Me. There is one of a minion, like there's a minion, like the yellow and the one-eyed creatures, and they're one in a minion too.
this is great. Yeah,
So
we're all
cute.
teaching a little bit of Jewish culture here.
I love it. That's great. Let's
Okay.
see.
Well, it's Purim coming up, so the next year's
Next week.
Purim play will be in Middle Persian, the entire script. How about that?
That would be great. Can I help?
I'm depending on you. Okay.
Anytime. Just let me know. I would need to learn it too
Well,
myself.
this year I've included Yiddish and Hebrew in the play. Ladies and gentlemen, I write the play for the synagogue for the holiday of, the Book of Esther, the Purim holiday. So I get to put in all kinds of things. I have her speaking Yiddish, which won't be born for another 200 years. Okay.
It's amazing.
So how many people are coming to this?
Well,
How do
currently we have 23, but we have some in the wait.
Oh, you're right.
Should I go ahead and admit? I don't know.
Yes, I think so. Why not?
Oh, they're getting admitted. So I think.
Good.
And I think, well, it's 4:01. Should we
Oh,
start?
Jill Biden is here in our talk. I just saw her name. But I'm not going to let Donald Trump in. That's all. That's too far.
Yes. If you see the name, we're going to remove him.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we can start anytime.
Okay. We have 23 people according to my thing here. Okay, I really want to make sure people hear this introduction because I am so proud of it. I worked on it last night. I think this is a major event in the history of everything. We're going to make some real progress today. So let's wait for one more person. We got 24.
25.
You got 25?
We did.
Okay.
Oh, does it show 24 for you?
I got 24.
Oh, okay, we're going to wait for one more on your side.
Okay, I'll ask the audience, if you're not here, please raise your hand. Or in the psychic meeting, they say, please raise my
there you
hand.
go. Nina is here.
Oh, good. Okay.
She's not here.
Hmm. Oh, great. This is such an important thing, what we're doing. I'm very excited about it.
I agree. Me too. Okay. So shall we start?
Well, you're the co-host. You decide. I'm ready.
I'm ready too, Dr. Krashen. Would you like me to introduce you, or would you like to start with your introduction?
I will start with the introduction so you can just relax and go out for a cup of Persian tea, okay?
Oh, I wish.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll see if I can find something to drink as you're doing the introduction.
Okay. Welcome to our session. I'm Steve Krashen here with Nooshan Ashtari. And I am very excited about this presentation because we're doing something that is very important in the history of education and the history of knowledge. I've studied a lot about how scientific discoveries are made. And one thing that happens, which is a quick and easy way, which we're going to do here, is when you have some knowledge from one field and you discover that you can apply it to a close by field, a neighboring field. So if you get something from geometry, you can probably translate it over to algebra. And that's how suddenly you get something new. And that's what we're doing. So this is good for libraries, and this is a library meeting. And what we're going to do is make a connection from the study of libraries, research on libraries, and what we call heritage language development, a very important section of bilingual education. And our hope here is that we're going to make heritage language development more effective and much more interesting and much more fun to teach. It's going to be easier on us, easier on the students, and it's going to be a lot more pleasant. How's that for a sales pitch? Pretty good, I think. Okay. Let me tell you what we know about libraries, or a little bit of what we know about libraries. Probably the most exciting breakthrough in libraries in this field has come from the work of Keith Curry Lance, Lance. Write that down, folks. He is your best friend. He is our best friend. Keith Curry Lance has been carefully doing studies over the last 20 years. He worked for the state of Colorado, and he was given this assignment. Is literacy something we should throw money at? And his answer, yes, but we have to aim carefully. He found the better the school library, more books per student, the presence of a school librarian, all these things, the higher the reading scores. How do you like that? Controlling for everything else he could. Now, this is exciting, okay? Oh, Connie Williams is here. Let's let her in. Good. It's an old friend. Okay, good person. Anyway, so Keith came through with that, and it's as time has gone on, we've seen why this is true, because the more books there are, the more access there is, the more students will be reading in school libraries. When they read in school libraries, let me give you a chain of events that happens, which we're going to spread from field to field. Exciting. We see kids are better readers. We see they have better vocabularies. They're better spellers. No, I won't comment about Donald Trump. I'll let that go. Okay. They know more. They have more knowledge. They write better, all these things. But there's more. When they have access to libraries and they start reading, my goodness, more things happen. They know more. They know more about history. They know more about geography. They know more about practical things. They know more about science. It just keeps going on and on. This is absolutely wonderful. The most recent stuff that's come out of this is that when you read more, and it's mostly reading fiction, when people take books out of libraries, school libraries, public libraries, it's mostly lots of fiction books they enjoy reading, etc. They have a better sense of what other people are like. They're increased in empathy. Really interesting. This is what President Obama said, that his feeling that he can get along with people different from him comes from reading fiction, pleasure reading. Also, when you do lots of pleasure reading, you get suspicious of overly simple solutions. You read complex fiction, it really pays off in everything. Now, the enemy of all of this is poverty. Children who live in poverty, and so many of them are in this state, don't have access to books. They have far less access of books at home. In their schools and local libraries, they aren't as good. But libraries are the solution to all these things. Martin Luther King. We are likely to find that the problems of housing and education, instead of preceding the elimination of poverty, will themselves be affected if poverty is first abolished. Now I want to tell you about the latest news, which comes from last night. And my looking at multiple regression analyses. I know you do this all the time. I just love multiple regression. I'm one of those statistics freaks. I can't help it. I was in the first AP calculus class ever taught in the United States. Can you imagine? That's how much of a math freak I am. My son's a professor of mathematics. It's so cool. Anyway, here's what we did. We looked at a bunch of studies of what's called the Pearls examination. This is a standardized test of reading, which they gave to kids in 40 different countries in their own language. Okay, this is first language development. Three major studies. Last night, working with Jeff McQuillan, we looked at the last set of data. This is the third time it's been done. Here's what all the data says. The most powerful predictor of reading in 40 different countries among fourth graders is poverty, no question. The higher the poverty, the lower the reading scores. When you add access to a school library, things look better. The first study, it actually balanced the effect of poverty, because poverty means less access to books. The last two studies, one last night we looked at, it reduced it considerably. So you guys, you got the answer. It's in libraries. That's where it is. That's why I'm so excited about that. I just bragged about my son. Let me brag about my daughter, who has a master's degree in library science. Isn't that wonderful? Oh, gosh. Well, what really counts, the conclusion we're coming to, is reading fiction, self-selected fiction, books that you really enjoy, that you have selected yourself. Now, I don't like to get books as gifts because people always ask me 2 weeks later, how did you like the book? And I usually haven't read it. I generally don't like books to be recommended to me, except in a couple of cases. When it's professional, you bet, then I do it. And it depends on who. When my son recommends a book, fiction doesn't matter. I always read it because he knows me better than I do. And the other person I listen to is my co-host today, Nooshan Ashtari, who's gotten me into some really interesting books on creativity, etc. Big Magic. Oh my gosh, is that good? Anyway, so this is what we found, that self-selected fiction seems to be the most powerful thing in increasing literacy, increasing general knowledge, and increasing these wonderful habits of mind. Now, let me now make the bridge to heritage language, and then I'll pass the baton to Dr. Ashtari. Heritage language means the home language of children who speak English as a second language in the United States, for example. And here is the typical path of development. When they come to school, let's say a Spanish-speaking child in Southern California, when they come to school, their Spanish is good. They've talked to mommy and daddy, they've talked to their grandparents, they do fine. By the time they're in 5th, 6th, 7th grade, they can hardly talk to their grandparents. Heritage language leaves, what we call language shift. We titled one of our papers, if you'll excuse us, Shift Happens, and oh boy, it really does. Now, this is really too bad because we know there are a lot of advantages to children developing both languages and as high a level as possible. Those of you who are bilingual, you know, of course, that bilinguals are more intelligent, right? It's not true of everybody. I personally know some counterexamples, but in general, it's true. If you take two kids who are basically of the same background and one has preserved the heritage language, that one does better in school. So this is really good. It's good for economics, economic development, for the student, for the person, and the country. It was Joshua Fishman who said this. If you want to if you want to buy, you can do it in English. If you want to sell, it's good to know your customer's language. Absolutely. And when kids are bilingual, they can take advantage of the wisdom of both worlds. They get the full benefit of the wisdom of the family, the elder, the aunts and uncles, the grandparents. Like so many of you, I got so much from the older generation, okay? I don't know what, I wouldn't be the person I am today if it wasn't for my aunts and uncles, especially my Aunt Sadie. I'll tell you all about her sometime. I learned so much from her, and it keeps going absolutely through the years. So why is this happening? Kids have a hard time keeping the language. Part of it is a lack of input, and part of it is the reaction that other people have to their errors. They make mistakes. If you're a heritage language speaker, Dr. Ashtari and I did a paper of a young boy who speaks Chinese as a heritage language. He's really good. This is great. He's His mom is a good pal of ours and all that, and teaches Chinese. I've been to her class, all this. But he doesn't, let's say he's 10 years old. We did the study. He doesn't speak Chinese like a 10-year-old in Beijing. He may speak like a 9 or an 8 or a 7-year-old because he's not getting all the input. He's very good. He's good enough. It's really impressive. But he doesn't have that final nuance. He doesn't have what are called the late acquired aspects of language. And you can't speed those up. You can't teach them. They come with time. What we found in our work is that if you want to speed language acquisition, the only way you can do it is by giving people more input. It's through comprehension that we gain language. Teaching grammar doesn't help. Correcting them doesn't help. Forcing them to speak doesn't help. In fact, it makes it worse. And the kids, when they don't reach the full development that people want them to, it's not their fault, but they get blamed anyway. I'll give you one case, and then I'll turn it over to Dr. Ashtari for some more. We had one case that I discovered of a child who parents spoke Spanish, but as she got older, she used Spanish less and less. Her friends at school were all born in the United States, were English speaker, and the relatives would constantly correct her and scold her. You can imagine how much this hurts. You feel like you're rejected from your own group. One of her relatives said, "People would never know that you are the daughter of an Argentine." Wow. Well, to make you even more depressed, I'll turn this over to Dr. Ashtari, who will tell you about more cases like this. This is the problem. So please.
Thank you, Dr. Krashen. Yes, it's very saddening what is happening within heritage language development, and it's in all different kinds of heritage languages, all across the board, which makes the situation even worse. But there's so little that we can do to make it better. That is why we keep talking about it, and hopefully that's gonna change within the next few years or even decades, the more we know about it. But that also seems to be the case about Farsi or Persian, which is my native language. I was born and raised in Iran, and I moved to the US for my graduate school. And once I started studying and kind of being in this environment, I started noticing that within Iranian American families in the US, which the United States, especially and particularly Los Angeles, um, has the most number of Iranian Americans living here. So it was very interesting for me to see that a lot of the children of these families do not speak Farsi or do not know Farsi at all. But a lot of the families kept saying that, oh, I want my kids to know Farsi. I want my kids. And the kids also, when they grew older, they always said that, oh, I wish I had learned Farsi or I had acquired Farsi when I was younger, which kind of engaged my curiosity to see what is exactly happening. And unfortunately, even with heritage language classes that they have in this area for Farsi enthusiasts or the families that they want their children to acquire Farsi, the methods that they use are very traditional. It's always grammar, 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 memorize vocabulary list after vocabulary lists. And as you said, Dr. Krashen, these students don't enjoy any of these classes, and especially a lot of these classes are done whether during weekends or Friday afternoons after classes, after school hours. And a lot of these students and a lot of these people that I interviewed, they mentioned that they did not get any help from these classes. They actually pushed them away from wanting to learn more about Farsi and acquire the language. I'll actually read a direct quote from one of the people that we interviewed. And it says, it's a tug of war. I feel like my parents want me to speak Persian, but then they turn around and criticize me when I'm not perfect. And then you go to a Persian mehmuni, which is the word for party, the Persian party, and then the older generation, they kind of look down on you and it feels horrible. So that language shyness that you talked about, Dr. Krashen, in your research in 1998 is very prevalent in heritage languages. That even if these heritage language acquirers can use the language and they have very minor imperfections, they get so criticized and they get ridiculed because, for example, they mispronounced one word, or there was something that they used that they shouldn't have used. For example, in some languages, including Farsi or Persian, as you know, there is a different you that you use for people who are older or out of respect than the pronoun you that you would use for your friends or people that are, you know, you feel more connected to. So even if they use, for example, an incorrect kind of you, they get criticized so much that that kind of makes them shut down and not want to have any interactions or put themselves in situations where they would hear Farsi or they would get input from Farsi. Also, when it comes to books, which research has shown over and over again that books are a great resource for getting input, comprehensible and optimal input, it seems that these languages don't have that many resources available. So we did this study with Farsi, which was inspired by a study by one of Dr. Krashen's students, former students, Dr. Jeff McQuillan. And what they did was that they used this research method that I find fascinating. It's called unobtrusive measures. And it's based on this book. I have the book available here. It's called Unobtrusive Measures by Eugene Webb et al. And what is very fascinating about this research method is that um, they went into libraries and they picked out several books from different languages. So some of the languages that they studied were Portuguese, Chinese, I think Spanish, Mandarin and Cantonese, and a couple of other languages. So they picked books from these languages. And what they did, which is very fascinating, and you can also do with other books in libraries, is that once you open the book, you can kind of tell on which page the reader stopped reading. So for instance, if there are any smudges or wrinkles or any separations of the pages, or even coffee and tea stains, you can kind of tell which was the last page that was read in these books. And they found that in those languages, in those several languages, the average was 16.8% of the books were in fact read by people who took these books out of the libraries. And these are self-study books in these languages. So grammar, vocabulary, the traditional method all over again. So you could see that they were not actually helpful. Those books were not actually helpful for these readers, so they stopped at only a few pages of these books. And we wanted to see what that case is like for Farsi or Persian. And we did the same method. We went to the libraries, we took out some self-study books in Farsi, and it turned out that that number is even less when it comes to languages such as Farsi. Out of the books that were, some of them were 300, 400 pages, only a few pages were read. And on average, it was 5% of these books that was read by the readers. So again, you can see that these kinds of books are not really helpful for these language acquirers to actually acquire the language and get the input that they need in order to move forward. However, when it comes to pleasure reading, that seems to be a completely different case that can actually be very helpful and effective for language acquisition that Dr. Krashen is going to talk in more detail about.
This is the most pleasant part of research I know of. The research is easy to understand and powerful, obvious implications, makes our life easy all the way down. Let me give you just a couple of studies. First, one major study. In fact, it's of course the most important one because I was co-author, that we did in, Beniko Mason actually did it in Japan. She did the work, I got the credit, which is a great partnership, let me tell you. It was with English as a foreign language in Japan for college students. These are students already, I would call them low intermediate. They could read some things. They had access to a library of 5,000 simplified readers in English. Isn't that delicious? You've got to have lots of stuff so they could self-select. Benico Mason kept track of what they read over semester, 2 semesters, one case, 3 semesters. All they had to do is write down the name of the book. They didn't have to write a book report. She gave them alternate forms of the TOEIC test, well-known test throughout the world in listening comprehension, reading comprehension in English. Here's what we found. The more they read, the better they did on this standardized test of English. The correlations, statistics fans, I know you love this stuff. By the way, if you had a hard time in statistics, it wasn't your fault. Okay. It's too bad. It's so wonderful. Anyway, the correlation was nearly perfect. The more they read, the better they did on the test. It was like a 0.94 correlation. Nothing else mattered. Didn't matter how much they studied. Did they keep vocabulary lists? It was how much they read. The TOEIC exam goes from 0 to 1,000. If you hit 250, you're ready to start reading. They gained 0.6 of a point for every hour they read, which means you read for 100 hours, you gain 60 points, which means you can go all the way in a short time. As we say, you can go from 0 to 60 in a year or two of pleasure reading and reach the highest levels of academic English just for fun. Dr. Ashtari mentioned our friend Jeff McQuillan. One of his great papers was called the Starbucks Method. I love this. He wrote a short paper and saying, we got a new way. This is before COVID. He said, this is a new way of getting better in a language. Go to Starbucks, bring a good book in another language, order some coffee, sit down and read for pleasure. This is the best method known so far, and much more fun than doing worksheets, et cetera. And it really, really works. Well, now heritage language. Coincidentally, not quite, the first study was done by, I want to tell you about Lucy Say, who's Jeff McQuillan's wife and also my former student. How exciting is this? Lucy, Dr. Say, looked at those people who came to the United States in younger years. They had been here for a while. Their native language was Cantonese, Japanese, Korean, did not have education in the home country, didn't live there for a very long time, but they were readers. They got going with books in their own language. No extended residence in their country of origin. It all happened here, but they all developed an interest in reading for pleasure in their own language, and they credited reading with developing the heritage language. This is amazing. They got reading material from the family, from friends, magazines. One girl got interested in car magazines and started reading them. This is wonderful stories. Comic books, newspapers, etc., and eventually novels, etc. All of them reach the highest level possible in their native language. This is how we keep languages. No pain, no struggle. Grace Cho also did a study like this of Korean immigrants to the United States. The same thing happened. She looked at them as adults. Well, they arrived in the United States when they were teenagers, and they had been here for several decades. They became readers in Korean, pleasure readers. They all reach high levels. One became a high school math teacher. I read every day. When I was hooked on Chinese novels translated to Korean, especially historical novels, I read for 3 to 4 hours a day. I couldn't stop, okay? Because it's so much fun. It's so pleasurable. One became a certified Korean translator. This is the answer. Important footnote, I have been very interested in the power of what we call light reading, especially comic books. I'll give you my personal story. When I was in second grade, I was in the low reading group, or third grade, I was in the low reading group. My dad took the matters into his own hands and said, Stephen, read comic books. Get all you want, I will pay for all of them. I became a fanatic comic book reader. Very soon, I went from the lowest group to the middle group to the very highest group. And to this day, I have been a comic book reader. It really works. The comic book research is pretty strong, but my favorite study on comic books, which is of great interest to librarians, was called Spider-Man in the Library. published, of course, in the School Library Journal back in 1981, a guy named Carroll. They put comic books in a school library, but did not allow them to circulate. You had to go to the library to read the comic books. Library, they looked at about a month before and a month after. Over that time, overall circulation went up 30%. Overall library usage went up 82% once they added comic books to the collection. And believe it or not, comic books have become pretty good literature. This all happened with Marvel Comics, as some of you know, when Stan Lee took over in 1961. And this was the beginning of the Silver Age of comics, when we had superheroes with problems, etc. And this has been very exciting. Again, what happened to me? Being an insomniac, I couldn't sleep one night, got up, wandered into my son's room. He was still in high school, and I found his comic book collection. I was up till dawn. I couldn't put them down. Peter Parker, the Amazing Spider-Man, etc. We have studies, so seventh graders report more comic book reading, also report more book reading, etc. So let's say this is true. And again, I have to repeat this. It's pleasant, it's easy, and it's not expensive. For the price of one computer, think how many comic books you can put in a school library, how many books you can put in. This is amazing. Okay, where are the books? That's the problem that we're dealing with. And you can see why I'm so excited. We're so excited about the potential crossover, because this is all that's necessary is supply access. We have problems even in Spanish. Can you imagine that? The collections of Spanish books, Sandra Pucci's studies, in elementary schools where 90% of the kids in Los Angeles in these schools come from homes that speak Spanish. Something like 15% of the books in the school library are in Spanish. The rest are not. Kids get their books basically, especially children of poverty, they get their books from school libraries. So this is the solution, in my opinion. Well, let me come to some conclusions here. Nooshan, did we talk about public libraries in your study already?
Not yet. Would you
Oh,
like
please
me to
do.
talk
Let me,
about
let me,
that?
let me give you the ball and you run with it, okay? This is one
Okay,
of
I'm
my,
ready.
this is one of my all-time favorite studies. Please talk about it.
Oh, for sure. So yes, so you talked about Spanish and other languages. That is also the case in Farsi, even more so, because I think there's still more resources in Spanish and some European languages, but not necessarily in Middle Eastern and some Asian languages. So I went to bookstores that are Farsi bookstores in this area. Again, Los Angeles, California is the hotspot for a lot of Iranian immigrants who come here and live here and have their families. So there are a few bookstores here and there that are Farsi or Persian bookstores. And the area in and of itself is called Tehrangeles because there are so many Iranians living in this area. And even the bookstores that I went to and I interviewed the bookstore owners, they said that they don't really have uh, books and resources available for those who want to acquire Farsi or Persian. They said that most of their customers are Iranians who immigrated, so not a lot of Farsi acquirers, because the books that they have available are not really appropriate for those language acquirers. So, for instance, they were saying that they have books on politics, or very specific specialized topics. They have some bilingual books here and there, but even the ones that they have available are very technical or dense in their language. So, for instance, they said that they had some books of Hafiz or Rumi, very famous poets of the country, which the language of those books in and of themselves are not even easy for native speakers of the language to understand. We need translations to read those, as native speakers read those resources in Farsi as well. So the books that they have available are not really helpful for these heritage language acquirers. And we also wanted to see what's happening in libraries in the area. So there are 72 branches of Los Angeles Public Libraries. And we found that they only had several hundred, 300 books available in Farsi, which for the millions of Iranians living in this area is very, very little. And then even out of those few hundred books that they had available, only 12 of them were checked out at the time of the study. So you can see that even the ones that they have available were not really beneficial for those who wanted to read and wanted to see what is available. And as you can remember from the previous study, the wear and tear study, which we nicknamed the study as, um, even the ones that were taken out, only a few pages of them were actually read. So not much happening in terms of something that can actually help these heritage language acquirers. And then in conclusion, in general, when it comes to heritage language development, there's a lot of blame and shame that gets thrown around. And not only in Farsi or Persian, so many different languages across the board that parents blame the children, children blame the parents. We actually had one case study that the student said that, oh, I told my parents, why didn't you learn me Farsi when I was a kid? I wish I had learned Farsi, and the parents said that you didn't want to, but then when they get older, they find that missing piece that they wish they had. So this blame gets thrown to parents, children, schools to parents, children, all over across the board, when the solution is actually very easy. We think that libraries can help immensely. Having book resources that are compelling and comprehensible for the learners. And if they can be such a great solution in all regards, it's going to be a win-win situation for everyone involved, because when it comes to pleasure reading and having options to self-select and read away, they're pleasant and easy. They lead to better acquisition of both L1, their first language, and consequent languages. They improve family relations. They get the better communication and better relationships with older generations, parents and children, and they get to have wisdom of the elders and older generation that a lot of these heritage language acquirers miss on, because of that language gap that exists across generations. And also those who read more, know more in general. So it's a win-win situation all across the board that libraries can definitely help in this regard. So that kind of wraps up everything of our mission. I hope anything I left out, Dr. Krashen?
I'm going to include one tiny little point.
Please do.
Bilinguals are smarter. You all knew this, right? Those of you who are bilingual. It's actually true. The studies show that if you take young people who are, they're equal in the same way, except one group kept the heritage language, the other didn't. The group that keeps the heritage language actually does better in school. And there are economic advantages where we all think English is the name of the game. We all think the kids have to know English, but this developing the first language as well is powerful, and it takes no cost. It's good for the economy. This was Joshua Fishman who pointed this out. Joshua Fishman has data that shows this. If you want to buy, you can do it in English anywhere in the world. But if you want to sell, it's good to know your customer's language. So this is all arguments in favor, none against, all advantages, no disadvantages. Better for the person, the bilingual, better for the country, better for everybody. Well, we do have a little time for questions, and we can take questions. And if you don't ask the right ones, I will restate them and answer the questions I want to answer. How's that? Speakers do that all the time. So if there are any questions, you can put them on the chat box, or if you can grab a mic, say it out loud.
Yes, you can definitely unmute yourself. I see one question in the chat box. Catherine is asking, do children get as much benefit from anime and graphic novels?
We don't really know. Most likely, yes. if you're looking for a research project, you're a grad student or a new professor, go for it. My intuition says absolutely, because it is so hypnotic. Kids like it so much, and there is the effect of context. We do have a few studies that show that kids who start watching TV and get interested in these things do make pretty good progress. So far, the little bit of research says, yes, eventually it's going to be through reading. That's where you're going to get the sophisticated language, but this can be very helpful. I have to tell you, I am a big fan of children's television. In fact, when I'm on the airplane, the old days when we traveled, I would watch SpongeBob even when my grandchildren weren't there, okay? As well as regular show. Some of the great geniuses are putting out these wonderful programs. So the answer is most likely yes, but I hope it'll be a stepping stone as well to literacy, et cetera.
Great, thank you. I see one more question coming up. Charles is asking, does listening to audiobooks and or podcasts help as much as reading a book?
Okay, do listening to audiobooks and podcasts help? Again, we don't have any much data on it because they don't really exist in great numbers. The podcasts and audiobooks we have are largely in English. Okay. When I started this infinite trip of driving back and forth from my house to Santa Monica over and over again, I got very interested in audiobooks, of course, because there's nothing more boring than Pacific Coast Highway over and over. And I went to all the local libraries to get audiobooks. It's all English, folks, and that's too bad. My first one was Harry Potter, and I still haven't recovered from that. It was so good. So the potential there is enormous. We haven't yet taken advantage of it. I hope we do.
I agree. And since we mentioned Dr. McQuillan and Dr. Sin, they have a podcast that that seems to
Yes,
be
indeed.
working really well. But I think what they have taken into consideration in regards to creating the podcast is that they have thought about what goes on in language acquisition, and they have graded them in terms of their level of difficulty and comprehensibility for different levels. So they have created them in a way that they can actually be very beneficial, similar to graded readers. So it's
It's
just.
called ESL Pod,
Mhm.
and Jeff is a wonderful presenter. He really makes it interesting. It's so good. And Lucy does a great deal of the writing. So they're a very good team. Okay, I will ask, oh, do we have any more? Otherwise, I'll start asking and answering questions.
There are some more. Should I ask them?
Sure.
Regina is asking, is heritage literacy included in the comprehensive literacy grant slash plan?
Sorry, say it again.
Is heritage literacy included in the comprehensive literacy grant or plan?
I have no idea. I hope it is, okay?
It should
Okay.
be.
Yeah, it should be. I put a link in the chat for California's comprehensive literacy plan, but
Oh,
I mean,
thank you.
it should be included, definitely. I'm just a huge fan of Dr. Krashen, so thank you.
That's wonderful. Thanks for that contribution. Okay, I will ask and answer the next question. Pretend that you asked it. Professor Ashtari and Professor Krashen, we loved your presentation. Thank you very much. And we'd like to know where we can find more of your writings. How can we find out? We'd like to have your books, your papers, etc. Well, let me tell you what's going on here. And library folks, this is of crucial importance, okay? I myself don't write books anymore. I used to. I don't write books anymore because nobody can afford them. They're too expensive. I see copies of my books. I got an ad today from Amazon of one of my books. I couldn't afford it, even at discount, not even close. The prices of books, any kind of technical book especially, have gone through the roof. Also, if you want to read our journal papers, the usual places, you won't find them. We don't publish in the regular journals anymore because they're too expensive. Unless you are a university employee and it's a first-class university with a good library and you have privileges at the library, you cannot find research studies written by scholars. They're too expensive. You know what happens? You see an article by Steve Krashen in a journal and you want to send for a copy, it's $40. And the journal gets the money, I don't, all right? Well, there's a new sheriff in town. Things have changed. We owe this all to a mathematician who started the open access movement. Real good thing. Everything I write now is in what are called open access journals. Free to the reader, free to the writer. You can download them for free. You can find mine in several places, and you can find Dr. Ashtari's in some of these places as well. I put them on my website, first of all, sdkrashen.com. D is my middle name, David. But more important, I post them, and so does Dr. Ashtari, on a really nice website called ResearchGate, researchgate.net. They're breaking the law, I'm sure, but they do all these things, and it's for the force of good. You can find our stuff, McQuillan's stuff, all the people we've talked about for free. If we don't do this, it's the end of our profession, because nobody can afford this stuff unless you are employed at that moment by a major research university. You can't get it. I'm a great admirer of Bernie Sanders on this. I think there's something called the common good. Some things we have to do, like getting vaccines for the COVID virus, for example. These things have to be freely available for the good of society. The same thing with scientific knowledge. Another thing we have tried to do, and all the people I've mentioned have tried to do this, articles are clearly written, easy length. Articles are too long and too complicated. I don't understand most of them. And I've tried to read just about everything for years and years and years. So we all try to write short papers that are comprehensible. I know that's a violation of my profession, but this is it. I have a hunch. I'm going to say something nasty, okay? Who was it who said, if you can't say something good about someone, sit next to me, right? That was Theodore Roosevelt's daughter, okay? So many scholars, I think, write complicated papers so they won't be criticized, because no one will understand them, and they'll get credit and fame and glory because they have published in top journals. No, we have a responsibility to the public. So we are on a campaign, librarians, to make everything available to the public for free. And this is a partnership between scholars and libraries. Okay, next question. Thank you for asking that, even though you didn't. Or have we done it?
Sorry, no, we have questions. Okay, Darla is asking, what is the name of the study about predictors of reading skills mentioned at the beginning of our session?
Well, you can find it on my website, and you can find it on ResearchGate probably. The first author is Mason, probably M-A-S-O-N, and I, Steve Krashen, am the second author. We've done actually several studies. You can find both of them on my website, sdkrashen.com, and on benicomason.net. So that's where they are, and they're buried in professional journals as usual. Okay, but we've made these things available, and they're pretty short. How do you like that?
They are amazing. I'm just trying to find the websites, I put some links in the chat box just in
I am
case.
very influenced by a scholar 200 years ago who said, when someone asks you the time, you don't want a history of the wristwatch. And this is what we've been doing in scholarship for too long, and it's got to end.
Absolutely. Julia said some very nice things in the chat box, but about you and your work. But I don't see a question. Let's see. Oh, There is another one. Do students get as much benefit from reading ebooks on a Kindle or computer device versus traditional physical books?
No studies that I know of. What is happening, I suspect, is that older people like me are a little uncomfortable reading off the screen. We're getting better at it. And computers are getting better at presenting things in a comprehensible form. I think that's the future. And if it's not perfect now, it's going to get better.
As long as it's something that they're reading, right?
Yep.
Someone else is asking, so if we have a large number of Spanish speakers, then should I have a large number variety of Spanish books at different levels?
Yes, you should. And these are going to be valuable for the Spanish speakers and also the English speakers who are taking classes. Oh, let me tell you what I did, what I've been doing at home. Okay. This COVID thing, it's been so horrible for many people. For me, it's been great. I have to tell you, I am home all day with my girlfriend. We've only been married for 55 years, so it's still exciting. Okay. And I've been reading a lot. I took this advice from Denzel Washington, had this wonderful post on Twitter. He said, people who are, in quarantine, you're feeling guilty because you haven't learned a foreign language. You haven't exercised, okay? You haven't learned to play a musical instrument. He says, I got good news for you. It's not over. Get back inside. I have been doing this and I've been taking full advantage of this. As a linguist, one of the things I love doing is working on other languages. Let me tell you what I've been doing and how it's turned out. I've been working on Spanish. Spanish is not my best language. It's been down on the list, but I'm okay. I can have a conversation, etc. Certainly not perfect. And I've discovered a couple of really good authors who write books in Spanish for students of Spanish. One of my favorites, Vito's second language acquisition, Bill Van Patten, a top scholar in the field. Been reading his stuff in Spanish. Adriana Ramirez, who's written excellent books. They're becoming literature. They're becoming really good things. So during the week, I've been staying home, reading every day in Spanish from these fairly easy books. Friday morning, early in the morning, because I'm an old person, I get to go to the grocery store and shop where there aren't too many people there, where I won't get infected, okay? The first time it happened, I checked my stuff out, and the guy who did it, I could tell his name was Hispanic. So I greeted him in Spanish. He answered in English, of course. And I said to him in Spanish, let me show off, mi metes a hablar español como ustedes, por favor, ayudarme, hablamos español. I really want to learn Spanish. It's my goal. Please speak Spanish. He loved it. Once a week I go there, and me and my friend Fidel, we've been having conversations in Spanish. And I've noticed that I'm getting better. He's talking more quickly. He's using more idioms, okay? I hardly speak Spanish at all. It's all reading. I've been doing this at home, and you guys can help me by pumping more Spanish books into your libraries so I can read them. By the way, Dr. Ashtari is my witness on this. 2 weeks ago, we had three-way conversation with a colleague who is a native speaker of Spanish, and I greeted her in Spanish. And you're my witness. She said, Steve, you're so much better now. What's going on? I'm not talking, I'm just reading. And it's getting better. This is, I think, really suggestive evidence that it's the reading that counts. Again, the library can make this powerful contribution to heritage language, second language, to everything if we bring in some Spanish books. Okay, have we finished?
Absolutely. There's a few questions. Sorry, I was trying to. So the authors, Bill Van Patten and Isabel.
Adriana Ramirez.
Oh,
Adriana Ramirez. Both really, really good. Check them out. Adriana Ramirez. Don't ask me to spell these things, okay?
Oh yeah, I was trying to write it, but I'll
There you
Google the names and I'll put them in
okay.
the chat box.
Brianna Ramirez and Bill Van Patten is quite a well-known figure. They write literature. I'm telling you, I should tell you about some of their novels.
Mhm.
They're really good. They're so good you forget that you're reading in another language, and that's when it's happening.
Exactly. So let's see. There are a couple of other questions. Let's see. Oh, Margaret is asking, can you recommend practical resources for collection development for school libraries that serve bilingual communities?
No, because I'm not a school librarian and I don't know. So you'll have to ask your colleagues. Okay. Connie Williams is here. She should be able to answer all that stuff because she's such an expert. Okay. Put you on the spot, Connie. But that's a great question. That is the right question to ask.
Like, God, you put in the chat box. So let's see. I think I saw another question, but if I missed any questions, please let us know. And please activate your audio and ask any questions that you might have. Or if I missed any questions, please let us know.
And let other people know about the good books you're reading. This is something we can use the computer for, just sharing this stuff on websites and getting it around teacher to teacher.
I'm actually really looking forward to some of the books that you've sent me
Mhm.
that I'm going to read hopefully soon. Ooh, anything with Susan Ohanian. I'm really looking forward to reading this one.
Susan, oh my gosh.
One Size Fits Few
Yep.
is a very good one. There's so many good ones.
Yeah, she is, in my opinion, the conscience of literacy education in the world. Yeah, I've learned a great deal from her. Absolutely. Thanks for bringing that up. Okay.
Ooh, we do have one more question. Did you start your Spanish reading with kids' books, for example, easy ABC kinds, or figuring out what with higher level books?
I'll tell you what I did, which is weird. I started with Spanish before I knew a lot about this stuff. Okay. Here's what I did. Again, this is 1980s. All right. I was a professor at USC, linguistics department. I went to the library. This is only possible if you're crazy and a fanatic. I took out 10 grammar translation books in Spanish. I read chapter 1 of all of them. If you go from 1 to 2 to 3, it gets hard right away. You want lots of easy reading. And that was enough to start me in some of the pedagogical things. This is before I knew anything about this theory and really how to do it. It brought me to the point where I could start reading these graded readers. I have never lived in a Spanish-speaking country. I've never been in a Spanish-speaking country for longer than a few days at a time, okay? My Spanish comes entirely from reading and occasional conversations, okay? And ahora yo puedo hablar español. It's fantástico. It really does work. It is so important for people like me in language studies to check this out, try this out. People like me and Dr. Ashtari, we have this language lust where we hear another language and we want to know it, do it. So for us, it's really good to try it out on yourself and see what works. And you meet the most interesting people that way. Very good question. Thanks.
Huge gratitude. Thank you so much, both of you, for being here as part of our CSLA conference. Always fabulous conversation and just the wisdom that you always share. Thank you so much. I'm pretty sure, but I wanted just one last question here. If they want to follow up and ask you more, is that okay via email or your preferred method?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So
Okay.
now you have to give them your home phone number. No, you have to give them your email. It's okay to contact me, skrashen@yahoo, but please bear in mind, keep it short, okay? I get hundreds every day. solicitations, of course, the same as you do, but ads, but really well-meaning questions, sincere, good questions from teachers who need advice and want some insight. And I just can't handle it. I do my best, but if I can, I will answer. I do recommend in both of our cases that you check out our papers because we have a lot of the answers there in our technical papers. And both of our stuff is at researchgate.net. You can find them there.
And as he already mentioned too, definitely take advantage of your colleagues. There's a lot of wisdom within this room.
You bet.
Just
Okay,
in
so-
case they need mine, it's Ashtari, NASHTARI @usc.edu. So you can definitely feel free.
Okay, thank you so much. We have to close this room. We're getting ready to do our CYRM celebration. Hope to see you all over there. Thank you again.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you very much.